Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel, Alan-Kadabra's Adventures, a quiet space for stories, reflection, and connection, where I try to help children and families express what truly matters. I wanted to start with something that I see again and again when I work with children. Children feel a lot inside, but when we ask what's going on or what they're thinking, the words just don't come out. They shrug, they say, "I don't know," or they simply shut down. On the other side, many parents and teachers genuinely want to help, but they're not sure how to ask without sounding pushing or fixing or even making things worse. This video is about a gentle way to open that space. A way that doesn't rely on the right question or the right answer. A way that lets children speak through stories instead of explanations. Take a moment, no rush needed. When a child is struggling, our instinct as adults is usually to ask questions. What happened? Why did you do that? How did that make you feel? These are good questions and they come from care, but very often they arrive way too early. Many children do not have clear words to express how they feel. The feeling comes first, language comes later. So when we ask for an explanation before the child feels safe, the question can seem very heavy. Even kind questions can feel like pressure. At that point, children often do one of three things. They go quiet, they give short answers that don't really say anything, or they repeat what they think the adult wants to hear. From the adult side, this can seem confusing and usually frustrating. It can feel like the child is avoiding conversation or refusing to cooperate. But most of the time, that's not what's happening. What's really happening is the child is asked to translate something that they can't even understand themselves. And without the right support, that translation can seem impossible. This is where conversations break down, even with the best intentions. I want to share a small moment that often comes back to me. I was working with a child who had become very quiet during that session. No argument, no obvious problem. But their body was tense and their answers were very, very short. I asked a few gentle questions, like what was on their mind or how their day had been. Each time the answer was the same: "I don't know." So I stopped asking. We sat there for a moment without filling silence. And you could feel that something was there, but it didn't have a shape yet. If I had pushed for an answer, the conversation would probably have ended there. The child would have withdrawn even further, or given me something safe and empty. Instead, I changed the approach. I offered a simple prompt and didn't ask for any explanation. I simply asked them to choose and then to imagine. As soon as the focus shifted away from them, something happened. The shoulders relaxed, the voice changed. The child started talking, not about themselves at first, but just about a story. And inside that story, the feelings that were hard to name began to appear. Nothing was forced and nothing was corrected. The words came when they were ready. The tool that I used at that moment was a wonder card. And it's important to say this: wonder cards are not about finding the right answer. They are simple cards with a word, an image, and a prompt that invite you to a story, nothing more than that. What makes them helpful is that they shift the focus away from the child, and the card becomes the center of attention. Instead of asking a child directly to explain themselves, it gives them something to look at, react to, and play with. The distance matters. When a child talks about a character, a situation, or a specific moment, they feel much safer. They are not being examined, they are not being corrected. They are simply telling a story. And through a story, feelings and thoughts that once were very difficult to name begin to show up naturally. The card doesn't lead the conversation, the child does. The card just opens doors. In practice, the way I use these cards is very simple. There's no setup, no explanation needed at the beginning. I invite the child to choose a card. Any cards, there's no right or wrong choice. Once the card is chosen, I don't ask what it means or how it relates to them. I usually tell them something like, tell me a story about this card. Or, if this card were part of a story, what would be happening at that moment? And that's all. From there, I listen. I don't interrupt, and I don't guide the story in a specific direction. And I don't look for hidden meanings while the child is speaking. Sometimes the story is short, sometimes it's just playful or silly, and sometimes it goes somewhere completely unexpected. What matters is that the child is leading. If the story pauses, I don't rush to fill in the empty spaces. I might gently reflect on the word that they used, or ask, where is it going next? There is no pressure to arrive anywhere. And very often, without being asked directly, the story begins to touch on something very real. A worry, a frustration, a hope. When that happens, I stay with the story. I definitely don't pull it back to an explanation, because the story already says what needs to be said. Over time, I notice small but very meaningful changes. Children begin to speak a little more, not because they are pushed, but because they feel safer. Their answers become longer, more detailed, more personal. Sometimes they even ask me, "Oh, teacher, can I please read a card?" They start to trust that they won't be corrected or rushed, that what they say can exist without being fixed. Some children who usually have very little to say begin to surprise themselves and realize that they actually have a voice. Others become more confident when sharing ideas, even when they feel unsure. They take more risks with words. What often changes first is not the content of what they say, but it's how they say it. The tone softens, the body relaxes, and from there, real conversations can happen. Nothing dramatic, nothing forced. Just a gradual opening at a child's pace. As you're listening, you might be thinking of a moment with a child in your life. A moment when they went quiet, or that the answers stayed on the surface. You may have felt unsure of what to say next, or if to say anything at all. If that feels familiar, you're not doing anything wrong. Sometimes the most helpful shift is not a better question, but a different way of inviting expression. You might gently ask yourself where this child feels safest to speak, and what might help them share without feeling examined. You don't need to solve everything right now. Just noticing is already an amazing beginning. Thank you for taking the time to be here. These conversations take patience and they take a lot of presence. If this way of working with children feels helpful to you, you're welcome to return. I share one calm video per week, exploring stories, reflection, and simple tools that help communication. There's no need to rush or do anything differently today. Just take what feels useful and leave the rest. And see you next time.